This is SkyTour News for July 15th. I'm Amanda Curran. Today in 1975, the Apollo-Soyuz test project commences. The Apollo-Soyuz test project was the first joint U.S.-Soviet spaceflight, acting as a symbol of the policy of detente that the two superpowers were pursuing at the time. It involved the docking of an Apollo Command service module with the Soviet Soyuz 19 and ceremoniously marked the end of the space race that had begun in 1957 with the Sputnik launch. The Apollo spacecraft was launched with a docking module specially designed to enable the two spacecraft to dock with each other, used only once for this mission. The Soyuz and Apollo flights were launched within 7.5 hours of each other, today in 1975, and docked on July 17th. 3 hours later, the two mission commanders, Stratford and Leninov, exchanged the first international handshake in space through the open hatch of the Soyuz. While the two ships were docked, the 3 Americans and 2 Soviets conducted joint scientific experiments, exchanged flags and gifts, including tree seeds which were later planted in the two countries, signed certificates, visited each other's ships, ate together, and conversed in each other's languages. After 44 hours together, the two ships separated and maneuvered to use Apollo to create an artificial solar eclipse to allow the crew of the Soyuz to take photographs of the solar cornea. Another brief docking was made before the ships went their separate ways. The Soviets remained in space for 5 days, the Americans for 9, during which the Apollo crew also conducted Earth observation experiments. The mission was considered a great success, both technically and as a public relations exercise for both nations. Today in 1965, U.S. scientists display close-up photos of Mars for Mariner 4. Mariner 4 was the fourth in a series of spacecrafts intended for planetary exploration in a flyby mode and was designed to conduct close-up scientific observations of Mars and to transmit these observations to Earth. Launched on November 28, 1964, Mariner 4 performed the first successful flyby of the planet Mars, returning the first close-up pictures of the Martian surface today in 1965. The Mariner 4 flew by Mars on July 14th and 15th, 1965, with its closest approach of 9,846 kilometers from the Martian surface on this date. Planetary science mode was turned on July 14th, and the camera sequence started on July 15th, where 21 pictures using alternate red and green filters, plus 21 lines of the 20-second picture were taken. The 22 photographs were transmitted over 6 hours, and all images were transmitted twice to ensure no data was missing or corrupt. Other mission objectives were to perform field and participate in measurements of interplanetary space in the vicinity of Mars, and to provide experience in and knowledge of the engineering capabilities for interplanetary flights of long duration. The spacecraft performed all programmed activities successfully and returned useful data from launch until October 1, 1965, when the long distance to Earth and the imprecise antenna orientation led to a temporary loss of communication with the spacecraft until 1967. Today in 2009, Endeavour delivers the last pieces of GEM to the ISS. STS-127 was the 23rd flight of the Space Shuttle Endeavour, with the primary mission being to deliver and install the final 2 components of the Japanese experiment module. When Endeavour docked with the ISS on this mission in July of 2009, it set a record for the most humans in space at the same time in the same vehicle, the first time 13 people have been in any station at the same time, and it also tied the record of 13 people in space at any one time. It was also the first time that 2 Canadians had been in space at the same moment. STS-127 launched successfully on its 6th launch attempt, today in 2009, as pieces of foam were observed falling off the external tank during the ascent, the same occurrence that had led to the loss of Columbia in 2003. However, Endeavour only received minor scuffs to its heat shield, the damage not enough to cause concern over re-entry. Endeavour carried a wide variety of equipment and cargo in the payload bay, with the largest item being the Kibo Japanese Experimental Module Exposed Facility and the Kibo Japanese Experimental Logistics Module Exposed Section. The exposed facility is part of the Kibo that will allow astronauts to perform science experiments that are exposed to the vacuum of space. The exposed section is similar to the logistics model on the Kibo laboratory, but is not pressurized. The shuttle landed at Kennedy Space Center 16 days later on July 31, 2009. This is SkyTour News. I'm Amanda